There was a woman standing in my kitchen sink washing a skillet, and when she looked up and saw me out in the yard, she smiled and waved and pointed around toward the back of the house, the way you do for a man who has come to read the meter. I stood in my own driveway with my hand still on the truck door, and I waved back at her because I did not know what else a person does. That was the 24th of June. I had been gone 130 days. And the question I could not get down out of my throat, standing there in the gravel with my hip aching and my suitcase in the bed of my grandson's truck, was not, "Who is that woman?" It was simpler than that, and it was worse. It was this: if she lives here, then what am I? My name is Orin Ledford. I am 77 years old. I live in Tullis Chapel, up in Lomax County, on top of Sand Mountain, in the northeast corner of Alabama, in a house my wife and I bought in 1971 with 11 acres and a block shop building and a little frame house out back where my mother lived the last 9 years of her life. Now, while I have got you here, do me one favor. My wife hung a telephone on our kitchen wall in 1964, one of the black rotary ones, and every Sunday evening at 7 o'clock for as long as I can remember, I have sat down on the step stool underneath it and made the same 3 calls in the same order. So here is what I would like. Tell me the first name of the one person you would call this Sunday evening if the phone only lets you make one call, just the name, and put down what time it is where you are sitting right now, because I have gotten curious in my old age about how many different clocks are running while one man talks. I will tell you where this goes, so you can decide if you want to ride along. Before that summer was out, I checked myself back into the very place I had just gotten out of, on purpose, and I paid for the room with my own money. It was the smartest thing I ever did in my life, and it cost me more than any check I ever wrote. I inspected bridges for the state of Alabama for 39 years. That is the whole resume. I started in 1968 with a clipboard and a ball-peen hammer and a man named Dub Yeager who did not say 4 words to me the first 2 weeks, and I finished in 2007 as the district man for 11 counties, and in between I crawled up under every kind of thing this state ever poured concrete on. There are 2 things that trade taught me, and both of them are going to matter before I am done. The first one is that you do not condemn a bridge from the bank. You can stand on the shoulder of the road and look at a structure and feel absolutely certain about it, and you will be wrong about half the time, and the half you are wrong about is the half that kills somebody. So you put your boots in the creek. You get up under it. You get your hands on the steel where nobody has had their hands in 20 years. The second one took me longer. Rust does not start where the paint is ugly. Everybody thinks it does. A young man comes out with me and he sees a girder with paint peeling off it in sheets, sun-bleached orange as a fox, and he wants to write it up. And I tell him, son, that is weather. That is a bridge with a bad complexion. The steel under that is fine. The rust that takes a bridge down starts in the joint. It starts where 2 good pieces of steel have been bolted up tight against each other for 40 years, so tight you cannot get a feeler gauge between them, so tight nobody has ever once thought to look. Water gets in there by capillary action, a little bit at a time, and it cannot get back out, and it works in the dark for decades, and the joint looks perfect right up until the day it does not. A bridge never fails where it looks worst. Remember that. I am going to say it again later, and it will mean something different then. My wife's name was Reva. She has been gone 4 years this past March. 49 years, and I do not have a word for what that is, so I will not try to make one up for you. The telephone was hers. She put it up because her mother was sick that year and she wanted it, where she could reach it from the stove, and it is still there, and it still works, and the cord is stretched out about 4 feet longer than the factory intended it to be, which is what 50 years of one woman walking to the refrigerator will do to a telephone cord. The Sunday order was hers too. 7 o'clock. First Ozella, her sister, over in Piedmont, then my sister, Wanda Fay, who lives about 11 minutes from me on the Blount Ridge Road. Then Dub Yeager, my old bridge partner, who is 91 and in a home in Gadsden and does not always know who I am, but always knows the sound of a Sunday. Reva used to say the order was not for us. She said the order was so that if one of us ever did not answer, the rest of us would know it inside of a week instead of inside of a month. I have kept it up since she died. Same 3 calls, same order, 7 o'clock. I would like to tell you that I kept it up because I am a faithful man. The truth is, I kept it up because when you have been married that long, the day has grooves worn in it, and Sunday evening is one of the deep ones, and if you do not put something in it, it just sits there open. On the 11th of January this year, at about 4:30 in the afternoon, I came down the 3 steps off my own back porch carrying a bucket of ashes out to the garden, and my right foot went out from under me on a patch of ice I would have seen at 50. I broke my hip. I lay in the yard about 20 minutes before Wanda Faye's boy came by looking for a chain binder, and I want to be square with you about something, because it matters later. She has taken care of me. That is not a sentence I get to leave out. And while the ambulance men were getting the gurney set, with my leg turned out wrong and my hand shaking, there was exactly one thing I said, and it was not about my hip. I told them to go in the house and get my sister on the phone. They told me 11 weeks. It turned into 18, and then it turned into a number I quit counting. Because at 77, a broken hip is not a broken bone. It is a negotiation. I went from the hospital in Fort Payne to a rehabilitation wing at a place called Grayton Manor, which is a nursing home with a hallway painted a different color so you can tell yourself it is not one. I had a room with a window that looked at a dumpster and a maple tree, and I want to be fair to them. The people who worked there were good to me. A girl named Precious got me up on my feet 9 days sooner than the chart said, mostly by making fun of me. But I was there through February. I was there through March. I was there through April and most of May, and by the end of it, I was walking 180 feet with a rollator and thinking about a house I had not seen since the ice. Now I have to tell you the thing I did not tell anybody, and it is the reason for all of it, and I have had a long time to sit with how stupid it sounds out loud. In 2019, my wife was sick, not the kind of sick where they give you a number, the kind where they give you a schedule. And what Medicare does not cover is not a scandal, it is just a list, and the list got long. Somebody has to sit with her. Somebody has to drive to Birmingham and back twice a week. Somebody has to buy the equipment that does not qualify and pay the man who comes out on a Saturday and pay for the thing that helps her sleep that the plan calls a comfort item. So I took out a reverse mortgage on my house. I am going to explain what that is in plain words because I did not understand it either, and I signed it. It is a loan against the house you already own. You do not make a payment. The interest just stacks up on the back of it, and the whole thing comes due when you die or when the house quits being where you live. That is the deal. That is the entire deal. I got about $62,000 out of it over 3 years, and I spent every dime of it on my wife, and I would do it again tomorrow. And I never told one living soul. Not my daughter Lois, who lives up in Illinois. Not my grandson. Not the men I have had coffee with at the same table at the Chapel Grill for 22 years. You have to understand what a paid-off house was to people my age. It was not an asset. It was the scoreboard. My daddy worked at the quarry with a bad lung, and he burned the note in a coffee can in the side yard in 1961 and made all 4 of us stand there and watch it. And that was the closest thing to a graduation ceremony anybody in my family ever had. So when the envelope started coming from the mortgage company, with that little window and that gray print, I got so I would take them straight out of the box and carry them into the shop building and put them in a drawer so that nobody dropping by would happen to see one sitting on the counter. I have thought a great deal about that drawer. There was a woman at the senior center in the county seat, back in the fall of 2019, who used to sit at a folding table doing free tax help. I do not know her name. I never saw her again. I mentioned to her the way you mention a thing you are ashamed of, sideways, that I had done a reverse mortgage, and she did not lecture me. She told me one thing, one time, and then she went back to her adding machine. She said, every year they are going to mail you a letter asking if you still live in that house, and do not let anybody else answer it for you. That was all of it. 9 seconds maybe, and I have carried that sentence around for 7 years like a rock in my coat pocket. And when the moment came that it was worth more than the house, I handed it to somebody else and did not think about it twice. Because here is what happened. I went in that hospital on the 11th of January, and about 10 days later, sitting up in the bed at Grayton with a tray in front of me, I looked at my sister and I said, Wanda Faye, I need you to run by the house and get the mail. And she said, of course. There is nothing wrong with that sentence. There has never been anything wrong with that sentence. I need you to get the mail, is what family is for. But I did not ask her to bring it to me. I did not ask her to open it with me. I asked her to handle it, and she knew exactly which drawer in the shop building I meant because she was the only person on this earth who knew about the loan. I had told her in 2019 in a parking lot because I had to tell somebody, and she was 71 years old, and she was the one person alive who had watched our daddy burn that note in the coffee can. Wanda Faye came every Tuesday. She brought pear preserves in a jar with a piece of masking tape on it. She sat with me. She got the physical therapy schedule out of them when I could not. And in the middle of April, a nurse stopped me in the hall and said, Mr. Ledford, your sister asked the front office to change your mailing address over to hers so nothing gets lost. Is that all right with you? And I said, that is fine. That is fine. 2 words, in a hallway, with a rollator in front of me and my mind on whether I could get to the door of my own bathroom by myself. I still say it to the ceiling some nights. My grandson Toby brought me home on the 24th of June. He is 29 and he inspects bridges for the state, which is a thing I had nothing to do with and will take credit for anyway. We came up the Blount Ridge Road and turned into my mailbox, and the first thing I noticed was that the post had been painted, not replaced. Painted. Somebody had gone over that old cedar post with white and done a neat job of it and cut in around the numbers. Toby saw me looking and he said, "Well, somebody has been keeping it up." Then the woman at the sink waved me around back. I got out. Togue got out. There was a boy about 9 years old sitting on my porch steps with a bicycle inner tube across his knees and a bucket of water, hunting the leak the way you do, and he looked up at me and said, "Hey!" And a man came around the corner of the house in gray work clothes with the name Ronnie stitched over the pocket, wiping his hands. And he was not angry, and he was not sneaky. He was a man walking up to a stranger in his yard. He said, "Help you with something, sir?" I said, "I am Orin Ledford." I have replayed his face 100 times. He did not flinch, and he did not flush. He just went completely still, the way a man does when two things he knows for a fact have collided in his chest. He said, "Ledford, like the man on the deed." I said, "Like the man in the house." His wife came out on the porch drying her hands. Her name is Sharita. His name is Ronnie Del Hollifield. He is 44 years old. He is a diesel mechanic on the second shift at a truck outfit down in Atala, and the boy on the steps is Booker. And Ronnie Del did the thing that told me everything about him before I knew one fact about my own situation. He said, "Sir, would you sit down?" And then he went in my house and came back out with a folder. Not a shoebox, not a wad of papers, a folder with the tabs cut, because that is a man who has been poor enough to learn that the only thing standing between you and losing an argument is paper. He laid it on the porch rail, and he went through it with me one page at a time. A lease, signed the 1st of March, for the house and 11 acres, $950 a month. Rent receipts, every one of them. A purchase agreement, signed the 2nd week of May for $138,000, with a closing date set for the 6th of August. A copy of a certified inspection. A copy of the septic permit. A statement showing $31,000 of the Hollifield's money already down and sitting in an escrow account at a title company in the county seat. And the seller on every one of those pages was a company. Bellwood Holdings, an Alabama limited liability company. And underneath all of that, the last thing in the folder was a copy of a deed. A foreclosure deed is what it is called, and I had never in my life held one. It was dated the 14th of February of this year. It said that the property had been sold at public auction at the front door of the Lomax County Courthouse for $86,500 to Bellwood Holdings. And it named the man it had been taken from. I sat on my own porch rail and read my own name in the middle of a paragraph on a page in a stranger's folder. And I felt the thing you feel when you step down off a curb you did not know was there. Now here is where a man my age has one job, and I want to say it plain because I very nearly did not do it. I wanted to say, that is a lie. I wanted to say, forged, every bit of it, somebody assigned my name, that is what you want. You want there to be a villain with a pen, because a villain with a pen can be caught. But I have spent 39 years with my hands on things people were certain about, and I have learned to slow down at exactly the moment my chest speeds up. So instead of saying anything, I took the folder out to Toby's truck, and I sat in the cab with the door open, and I read every page twice, looking for the one thing I know how to look for. I could not find a single false signature. There was no forged lease. There was no forged deed. My name did not appear anywhere on that paperwork in handwriting that was supposed to be mine. I want you to understand what that means, because it took me another 2 weeks to understand it. It means that whatever had happened to my house, it had not been done by somebody breaking a rule. It had been done by somebody following every single one of them. That night I slept in the shop building on an army cot, which Ronnie Del offered to fix better, and I told him not to, and come daylight, I went and did the one thing my trade ever taught me to do first. You do not condemn a bridge from the bank. You get under it. In Alabama, the deed to your house does not live in a file cabinet in a bank somewhere. It lives at the courthouse, in the office of the probate judge, who around here is an elected man that also marries people and titles trailers. The recording room is open to anybody with 2 legs and a reason, and you do not have to have either one, and you do not have to explain yourself to a soul. I got there at 8 in the morning on the 25th of June. There was a lady behind that counter named Marva Dendy who has been there 26 years. And when I told her what I was after, she pulled a chair around to my side of the counter without saying anything about it, and I have decided since that no one person was kinder to me the whole summer than that. Here is what the record said, and I read it 4 times, because reading it once is how you get things wrong. In 2019, I gave a mortgage on my home. That is true. I signed it. My hand, my pen, in a lawyer's office in Fort Payne with the air conditioning running. In November of last year, the loan servicer sent a letter to that house saying the loan had come due and payable. I never saw it, because in November, I was still living there, and I was still carrying that gray print straight out to the drawer in the shop. In December, they sent the notice of foreclosure. In January, they began publishing it. In this state, a foreclosure sale gets advertised in a newspaper in the county where the land is once a week for 3 weeks running. And the affidavit of publication was right there in the record, sworn to by the publisher, and it was perfectly good, and the newspaper was the Lomax County Weekly. Nobody in Tullis Chapel takes the Lomax County Weekly. We are 40 minutes from that county seat, and we have always looked the other direction, toward Fort Payne, for a ball score or a funeral notice or anything else. There is no crime in that. It is just the shape of a mountain. So on the 14th of February, at 11 in the morning, at the front door of a courthouse 40 minutes from my kitchen, a lawyer stood up and read a legal description of the place my wife died in and asked for a bid, and one bidder answered, $86,500, cash. And I was 11 miles away in a room with a window that looked at a dumpster, learning how to get out of a chair without using my arms. Then I asked Marva for one more thing. The company, Bellwood Holdings. That is a public record too at the Secretary of State, and it takes about 4 minutes on a computer, and Marva swung that monitor over on its arm and let me read it myself because printing it for you is the one thing she is not allowed to do. Organized on the 9th of December of last year. Registered agent, a lawyer in Guntersville I never heard of, and in the box where they put the name of the person who signs the paper to bring the thing into existence, there was a name I have known since the day I was 6 years old and my mother came home from the hospital with her. Wanda Fay Ledford Skidmore. I want to tell you that the room went sideways. It did not. That is the part nobody believes. I looked at that name on that screen and I felt almost nothing at all. The way you feel. Almost nothing when you get up off the ice, because the body knows before the mind does that this is going to take a while and there is no point in spending anything yet. Marva said, "Sir, do you want that chair back?" I said, "No, ma'am," and I thanked her, and I went out and sat a long while in the cab with both windows down and the courthouse squatting there in front of me. And I did not call my sister. That is not restraint, and I will not let you hand it to me. It is not that I was above it. It is that there is a rule in my trade that has saved me from being a fool more times than I can count, and it came up out of the floor at me before any feeling did. You never argue with a man about a bridge. You do not stand there on the shoulder of the road hollering with a county commissioner about whether a beam is sound, because the minute you tell him what you think you have got, he starts writing the story that explains it, and every piece of paper that comes out of that office from then on is written by a man who knows he is being looked at. You go get your numbers. You put them on the form. The form goes to Montgomery. The man does not. So I did not call Wanda Fay. I called Ozella, my wife's sister, on a Wednesday afternoon in the middle of the week for the first time in 50 years, and when she picked up and heard it was me, she said, "Orin, what is wrong?" And I said, "Ozella, I need you to tell me if I have lost my mind." She said, "No more than usual. Tell me." It took me 9 days to get the servicer to send me my own file, and they were not being ugly about it. I had to prove I was me to a company that had been told I was not there anymore, and I had to do it from a shop building with a cot in it. When the envelope came, it was 3/4 of an inch thick, and there was one page in it that ended the argument I had been having with myself since the parking lot. Every year on a reverse mortgage, they mail you a letter. It is not a bill and it is not a trick. It is one page and it asks you one thing. Do you still live in this house? You sign it and you send it back, and that is all that is between you and the whole business staying asleep for another year. Mine went out the first week of March. It came back the third week of March. It was not signed by me and nobody pretended it was. Down at the bottom, in the space where they leave you 4 blank lines in case there is something they ought to know, there was one sentence in blue ink in handwriting. I have been looking at my entire life. My brother does not live here anymore. He is a resident of Grayton Manor in Fort Payne. And it was signed, Wanda Fay Skidmore, sister. Her own name, her own hand, not one word of it, false. I sat down on that cot and I read that sentence maybe 40 times. And here is the part that not one person in my family has been willing to hear me out on since. Nobody committed a crime against me. Nobody forged anything. Nobody drugged me. Nobody stood over me with a pen. Nobody sued me. Nobody told a lie to a judge, because there was never a judge. A woman answered a letter that was sitting in her hands, and she wrote down a fact that was true on the day she wrote it, and every single thing that happened after that happened the way the law says it is supposed to happen, on schedule, with notice, in public, in a newspaper. I was not robbed. I was outweighted. And I have thought and thought about which of those is worse to be, and I have landed on the second one because a robbery ends. Being outweighted means somebody stood in your kitchen and did arithmetic about you. Now, the other thing in that file was a number that did not fit, and I want to give it to you because it is the loose bolt that let me get my fingers in. They sold the place for $86,500. What I owed, with the interest stacked up on the back of it for 6 years, was about $81,300. Take out the lawyer and the advertising and the rest of it, and there was $2,900 and some odd dollars left over. That money is not the bank's. When a house sells at a foreclosure sale for more than the debt, the extra belongs to the person who lost the house. It is called the surplus, and there are law offices in every state in this country sitting on it right now because nobody ever comes to ask. That $2,900 had been sitting in a trust account at a firm in Guntersville since February, waiting on a man they had been told was gone. So somebody had bid $5,000 more than the debt. Not much more, just enough more. Now sit with that, because it took me a week. If a stranger buys your house at auction, he bids what he thinks he can flip it for. He does not shave it. But if the person bidding is somebody who has to be able to say afterward that she paid a fair price and there was money left over for you, then $5,000 is exactly what that costs. And she never went and got it. Not for me and not for herself. While I was sitting on that cot doing that arithmetic, the other thing was happening down the mountain, and I only found out about it later, one piece at a time, from people who were embarrassed. Everybody already knew. Everybody in Tullis Chapel had been told, gently, over months, by a woman with a jar of preserves in her hand, that Orin was not coming back, that his hip did not take, that he gets confused in the afternoons now, that it is a blessing, really, that he is somewhere they can watch him. There was not one lie in any of it. My hip did not take, not the way they promised. I do get muddled at 4 in the afternoon, same as every man my age who has not slept right since his wife died. Every fact was true. The only thing that was backwards was the direction. And that is a thing worth knowing about how people are taken from, at my age, in this country, in the year we are living in. It does not come at you as a lie. It comes at you as a true story told with the arrow pointed the other way, by somebody who has standing to tell it. On the 9th of July, I sat down across a desk from a lawyer named Odessa Pinkard, 63 years old, real property and elder law, second floor, over a hardware store in the county seat, window unit in the wall, and a paper calendar on the desk blotter with a rubber band around the pages that had already gone by. If you have got somebody in your life who is over 70 and living alone in a house they think is safe, stay with me through the next 4 minutes, because what this woman told me in that room is the part I would want a stranger to have told my daddy. And if this channel is the one place anybody has ever explained this kind of thing to you in words you can use, then subscribe so it can find you again when you need it and not 2 years after. She turned me loose and let me run for 11 minutes and never opened her mouth. Then she asked me 2 questions. The first one was, did anybody ever make you sign anything at that nursing home? And I said yes. In March, in the day room, my sister came in with a clipboard and a pen and about 6 pages, and she said it was so the mortgage people could talk to her instead of running me around, and I signed it between a bingo card and a supper menu with a woman 2 chairs down watching a game show at full volume. I did not read it. I want that on the record with you. 77 years old, 39 years of reading things other people signed, and I did not read it. She wrote that down, and she did not scold me. She said, that is what a day room is for. Then she asked the second question, and it was the whole ball game, and I did not know it. She said, what is the date on that foreclosure deed? I said the 14th of February. She picked up the paper calendar and she took the rubber band off and she counted with a pencil, and it was so quiet in that room I could hear the pencil. Then she said, Mr. Ledford, you have got 50 days. I did not understand her. I told her the house was sold. I said it out loud like a man arguing for the other side, which is what shame will make you do. And she said, in Alabama, a foreclosure sale is not the end of it. There is a window afterward where the person who lost the property can buy it back from whoever bought it. It is called the statutory right of redemption. It is in the code. For a house you are living in as your homestead, with a loan written after 2016, and with the notice they are required to mail you 30 days before the sale, that window is 180 days from the day of the sale. The 14th of February, 180 days. That runs out on the 13th of August. She said, you came home on the 24th of June. You have been walking around this county for 2 weeks thinking you were a man with nothing, and you have been a man with a key the whole time. I asked her about the clipboard, the 6 pages in the day room. I said, is one of those a paper where I gave that up? And she said the thing I have repeated to every man I know since. She said, it does not matter what was on that clipboard because there is one door in this state the law will not let anybody lock, and it will not let you lock it either. You cannot sign that right away in advance. Not for your sister, not for a bank, not for anybody. It is not yours to give. The legislature put that door on the wall on purpose for exactly the kind of week you have had, and it has a clock on it, and a clock is the only thing you have to be afraid of. I sat there in that little office over the hardware store, and my hands finally started to shake, which they had not done once since a woman waved me around toward the back of my own house. Then Odessa Pinkert took her hands off the desk and folded them, and she said, now comes the second half of it, and there is no soft way to hand it to you. She said, the people who bought your house can send you a written demand for possession of that property, and if they do, you have got 10 days to hand it over. Not argue about it. Hand it over, and if you do not, you forfeit the redemption. All of it. The door closes, and it does not open again. I said, I am sleeping in my own shop building. And she said, I know you are. The demand came on the 14th of July, hand-delivered by a young fellow in a Kia who apologized twice and could not get back down the driveway fast enough. 1 page from the lawyer in Guntersville on behalf of Bellwood Holdings. Deliver possession of the premises within 10 days. 10 days. The 24th of July. That same evening, I walked up to the house and asked Ronnie Dale Hollifield if he would come sit on the tailgate with me, and I told him the whole thing, not a shaped-up version. The loan I was ashamed of, the drawer in the shop, the letter, my sister's handwriting, the $86,500, the 180 days. He listened all the way through with his hands hanging down between his knees. Then he said, Sir, we close on the 6th of August. And there it was. 2 clocks in one house running against each other, and neither one of us had put either of them there. His closing on the 6th. My door shutting on the 13th. $31,000 of that man's money sitting in an escrow account, most of which came out of a settlement from when a jack stand let go on him in 2021 and took part of his foot. Sharita came out on the porch and stood there with her arms folded. She said, if you get it back, where do we go? I did not have an answer. I want you to know that. I sat on the tailgate of my own truck in my own yard and looked at a woman who had washed my wife's skillet and had every right to be standing where she was standing, and I did not have an answer for her. Then I went in the shop and called my daughter in Illinois. Lois is 52. I had not told her any of it. Not the fall, not really, not the way it was, not Graydon, not the house. And when I finished, my girl did not say one word about her aunt. She said, 2019, Daddy. You did that in 2019 and you did not call me. And then she cried. And I sat in a shop building with a phone against my ear and let her, because she was right, and because there is not a single thing you can say to a child who has just found out she was kept outside on purpose. That is the bill I actually paid this summer. Everything else was arithmetic. On the 22nd of July, I loaded the truck. I had 2 places I could have gone. Tobey has a spare room in Fort Payne, and he asked me more than once, and he was hurt when I said no. Odessa offered to make a call to a church family in the county seat. I drove myself back to Graydon Manor and I asked at the desk if room 14 was open, and it was, and I paid for it out of my own pocket, $185 a day, for 22 days, which is more money than that room is worth and exactly what it was worth to me. People have asked me why. Toby still brings it up. Part of it is practical, and I will give you that part first, because it is true. Graydon is 11 minutes from that courthouse, and I needed to be standing at that recording window at 8 in the morning more than once, and I did not want to be depending on anybody's work schedule to do it. But that is not the reason. The reason is that I could not stand to be a guest in somebody's house while I was fighting for my own. I have looked at that from every side, and it does not get any prettier, and it does not go away. A man will pay $185 a day to keep from being carried. That is not a virtue. That is the same pride that put the mortgage envelopes in a drawer. It just happened, that one time, to be pointed in a useful direction. Precious was still working that hall. She saw me come down it with my own suitcase, and she said, Mr. Ledford, what in the world? I said, I am here on business. And that Sunday evening at 7 o'clock, I stood at the payphone alcove at the end of the hall at Graydon Manor, where they keep a wall phone for the residents whose people cannot work a cell phone, and I made the calls in the order. Ozella first. She picked up on the 3rd ring, and she talked for 9 minutes about a hummingbird. Then the 2nd number. It rang, and it rang, and it rang, and the answering machine picked up, and it was my sister's voice saying, "We are not able to come to the phone." And I stood there in a hallway that smelled like green beans and listened to my sister's voice all the way to the end of the message. I did not leave one. I never have. It is not a message. It is a call. Then I called Dub Yeager in Gadsden, and Dub did not know who I was, and Dub said, "Well, it is Sunday." And I said, "Yes, sir, it surely is." Now I will tell you how an old man in a nursing home room finds $91,000 in 19 days. Because I know that is the question, and the answer is not a windfall, and it is not a lottery ticket, and it is not a rich relative. You buy the place back for what the buyer paid for it, plus interest, plus what the law calls lawful charges. That is the taxes they paid, the insurance they carried, and the value of any permanent improvements they made while they had it. Bellwood Holdings had put a roof on my house in April and a new septic field in May. Their lawyer's first letter to Odessa put those at $19,200. And here is the piece of this that I would tattoo on the inside of somebody's arm if I could. In this state, if you were the one entitled to buy it back, you can make a written demand on the buyer for an itemized statement of the debt and every lawful charge they are claiming. And they have got 10 days to give it to you. 10 days. And if they do not, they lose the charges. Not the purchase price, the charges. Odessa wrote it on one page. No threats in it, no lawsuit in it, no accusation of anything. It said who I was, what I was entitled to, and that I was demanding the itemized statement, and it gave the date. I carried it myself. Certified mail out of the post office in the county seat on the 23rd of July at 9:40 in the morning, and a copy hand-delivered to the registered agent's office in Guntersville that same afternoon, and a stamped copy back to Odessa's file. Then I went to the bank. The Farmers and Merchants in the county seat, which has been bought twice since I was a young man and still has the same lobby. The lending officer is a fellow named Kurt Yeager, 52 years old. His daddy is Dub Yeager, who taught me the trade and who does not know my name anymore. Kurt read the file and asked me 4 questions and looked at my retirement statement from the state and my Social Security, and he said, "Mr. Ledford, I want to say something so you do not sit there feeling like you are asking me for a favor." He said, "You are the best secured loan on my desk this month. There is $140,000 of dirt and buildings behind $92,000. There is no other lien on it after redemption, and you have got 2 checks a month that come whether you get out of bed or not. If I turned you down, I would be a bad banker, not a good one. $92,000, 15 years, 77 years old, and I put my name on a 15-year note, and I laughed out loud in that lobby, and Kurt laughed, and then he said something that I did not expect and have not gotten over. He said, "My daddy talked about you at supper. He said you never once wrote a man up in front of his crew." Then we waited on the 10 days. They did not answer. I do not think it was arrogance, and this is important, because handing you a villain right here would be the easy way, and I am not doing it. I think a lawyer in Guntersville got a letter from a lawyer in a county he does not practice in, on behalf of an old man his client had told him was in a nursing home and confused, and he put it in a stack. That is all. I think my sister told him what she had told everybody, and he believed her the way you believe a client, and he set it aside. On the 2nd of August, the 10 days ran out, and $19,200 of roof and septic field fell off the price of my house. Not because anybody outsmarted anybody, because a letter sat in a stack. And on the 1st of August, Ronnie Del Hollifield called me at Grayton Manor on the hall phone, and he was talking fast. He said, "Mr. Ledford, the title company called Sharita. They are asking questions about a redemption period. They say they might not be able to write the policy. Sir, have you been talking to them?" And I said, "No, I have not said one word to them," which was true. Odessa had. Thursday, the 6th of August, 9 o'clock in the morning, Lomax County Land and Title, which is 2 rooms and a hallway behind an insurance agency in the county seat. The conference room has a table that seats 6, and they had carried in a folding chair from the hall to make 7, and there was a coffee maker sitting on top of a filing cabinet with a paper towel folded under it. I did not go up there to make a speech, and I need that understood, because I have watched a lot of men my age imagine a room like this and what they would say in it, and I have come to believe that the wanting to say it is the thing that loses the house. Odessa and I got there at 8:40. Ronnie, Dell, and Sharita came in at 10 till, dressed the way you dress to buy a house, and Sharita had a folder of her own and her hands were shaking worse than mine. My sister walked in first, at 4 minutes till 9, ahead of the lawyer from Guntersville, carrying a red accordion file under her arm. She had on a pressed blouse. She had gotten her hair done. She came in through that door the way a person comes into a room where they are the reason everybody else is there, because for 6 months, in her mind and on every piece of paper in that county, She was the seller. She caught sight of me over against the wall in that folding chair, and she hitched, maybe a second and a half. And then she sat down. Nobody yelled. There was no sheriff. There was no man in a windbreaker. Lamar Witt is the closing attorney, and he is about 45, and he had two pieces of paper in front of him. He said, "Good morning," and he said, "Before we start, I have got to put something on the table." He read from the first page. He said, "The property was sold at foreclosure on the 14th of February of this year. Under the code, the statutory right of redemption in this matter does not expire until the 13th of August. That is a week from today." Then he read from the second page, and the second page was from the underwriter in Birmingham, and it said that the company would not insure title over an open statutory right of redemption and that no policy would issue. He set it down and he said, "I cannot close this. Not today." My sister said, "That is not right." She said it to the room. She said, "He does not live there. He has not lived there since January." And her voice was steady and reasonable, and she believed it. And that is the part that took the wind out of me, because she was not lying then either. Odessa slid three things across that table, one at a time, and she did not say anything while she did it. A certified copy of the written demand for the statement of debt and lawful charges, stamped the 23rd of July. A statement showing no response inside the 10 days, and a line at the bottom saying that the lawful charges claimed $19,200 were forfeited. And a cashier's check from the Farmers and Merchants Bank made out to Bellwood Holdings for $91,248.16. The bid, plus the interest, to the penny, calculated by a woman with a paper calendar. The lawyer from Guntersville put on his glasses and read for maybe 90 seconds. Then he took them off and he leaned over and he said something quiet to my sister, and I watched her face while he said it, and I have seen that exact expression one other time in my life, on a bridge deck in Marshall County in 1984, on a man who had just been told the thing he had been standing on all morning was not holding anything up. And that was when I opened my mouth for the first and last time in there. I did not say she stole from me, because she did not. I did not say she belonged in jail, because she does not. I did not ask her about the $86,500 or the company or the roof. I said, "Wanda Fay." She looked up. I said, when you wrote that sentence down, "that I do not live here anymore. What room were you standing in?" The coffee maker was going. That is all there was in that room for about 4 seconds. And my sister said, "Your kitchen." We sat in her car in that parking lot afterward for about 40 minutes with the air conditioning running, and I will hand you what she told me without sanding any of it down for her sake or for mine. Her boy has a wife with something wrong with her kidneys, and Wanda Fay put her own house up 2 years ago to help them, and last fall they came apart. She was $63,000 underwater on a house she had been in since 1979, and she never said a word about it to me, for the same exact reason I never said a word to her about mine. She said, "When that letter came to me in March, I did not plan anything. I answered it because somebody had to answer it, and it was sitting in my hand." And then she said a thing I have been carrying around ever since like a stone in my shoe. She said, "And after that, Orin, every single thing I did was legal. Every step." And that is how I knew it was wrong, because I kept waiting for something to stop me, and nothing ever did. She had meant to hold it. She said that, and I believe her, mostly, on Tuesdays. She was going to deed it back to me when I got out. But she had borrowed the $86,500 from a fellow in Boaz on a 6-month note at a rate I will not repeat, and in May, that note started breathing on her. And that is when the Hollifields went from renters to buyers. That is the whole crime. There was not one. I redeemed the property on the 11th of August, 2 days before the door would have swung shut. Odessa recorded the instruments at the probate office at 8:09 in the morning, and Marva Dendy stamped them and said congratulations like she was handing me a marriage license, and I stood at that counter and could not talk for a second. Bellwood Holdings had to give the Hollifields their $31,000 back. My sister signed that release the same afternoon without being asked twice, which is the only thing she could still do that was worth anything, and she did it fast, and I will hold on to that. Ronnie Dell and Sharita and Booker live in the little house out back, the one my mother was in her last 9 years. They pay me $600 a month, which is less than they were paying, and they have got the whole school year at that price, and after that, we will see. Booker has run a hose out there and he washes my truck on Saturdays, without being asked and without being paid, and I have quit arguing with him about it. Now here is what I want you to take with you, and then I will hush. If you have got a reverse mortgage, that letter comes once a year and it asks you one question. Answer it yourself, in your own hand. Keep the copy. If your hand does not work, sign it with somebody watching who is not the person who benefits. If you are ever helping somebody handle the mail, open it with them. Do not take it home. If a place ever does get sold out from under you, in most states in this country, that is not the end of the road. There is a window afterward, and there is a clock on it, and the day of the sale is the day the clock starts, so write that date on something. If you are in that window, demand the itemized statement of debt and charges in writing, and date it, and keep the green card, because they have got a short number of days to answer you, and if they do not answer, the charges come off. And if a place sells for more than what was owed, that extra money is yours, and nobody is going to drive out to your house and bring it to you. I never went to law school, and the code in your county is not the code in mine, so do not take my word for any of it. Go see one of your own, not your sister's, not the bank's, yours. It costs less than 1 day in the kind of room I paid $185 a day to sit in. Wanda Fay still comes on Tuesdays. We have not talked about the 6th of August since the 6th of August. She brought pear preserves last week, and I ate them. And on Sunday evening at 7 o'clock, I sit down on the step stool under my wife's telephone, and I make the calls. And there are 4 of them now. Azella, Wanda Fay, Dub Yeager. And then the little house out back, which has its own line running to it since 1988, and Booker gets it on the second ring every single time because he waits by it. I told you at the start that a bridge never fails where it looks worst. I spent 39 years teaching young men not to be fooled by the ugly girder, the one with the paint peeling and the rust running down it orange as a fox, and every one of them wanted to write that one up, and every one of them was looking at weather. The steel that gives way is in the joint. 2 good pieces, bolted up tight against each other since before you were born, so tight that nothing can get between them, and nothing that gets in there can get back out. Nobody inspects that. Nobody thinks to. There is no reason to. It is held for 40 years. My sister and I were bolted up tight for 71 years. So go find the joint you have never once looked at. Not because somebody in there means to hurt you. 9 times out of 10 they do not, and mine did not, and it very nearly cost me the house my wife died in anyway. Look at it, because it is the only place in your whole life that has been held tight long enough, in the dark, out of the weather, with nobody watching, for the water to get in.